All right. We should be live. And hello, everybody. It is the Dark Conservatarian here with another episode of Strike Force. This one being an interview stream, actually. And I'm here with a YouTuber that I have been watching for the last year and actually been quite fascinated with his content and just doing a general chill interview to ask some questions about him, his beliefs, and whatnot. And also a little bit of a promotional YouTuber. And I would like that person to be introduced as. Well, as the name says, I mean, cannot refer to him as anything else. I don't think. Philosopossum. Introduce yourself, Philosopossum.
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for having me for this interview. I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me the time on your platform. Is very much obliged. Yeah, my real name's Andrew, but on the internet you all know me as Philosopossum. I'm just a small sort of political commentator type YouTuber.
Doxed yourself. Yeah, like you said you're just a small time political commentator on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm a small channel. I'm just under 300 subs right now. I've been YouTubing for about. I uploaded my first video in November of 2019. That puts me at about 2 years old at this point. Coming up.
I got you.
Yeah.
I've been doing this game for a little over 5 years, and I still have not hit 1,000 subscribers yet, which is a little bit of a shame. But yeah, you know what's an even bigger shame is the fact that you got responded to twice by Professor Stick, and you still haven't hit 1,000 in spite of that. And that's quite a shame. And just in general, quite a shame that a YouTube channel like yours is not as big as it is. So that's why I'm here. And for everybody that is just tuning in, hello, JC Armitage in the live chat. And anybody who might watch in the future, I highly suggest go ahead and subscribe to Philosopossum. Link to his channel is down in the description box. Definitely go subscribe to him. He's a guy that I highly support and agree with as well. And I guess another thing that kind of fascinates me about your YouTube channel, Philosopossum, or just Possum, as I guess I should just call you for short, is the fact that your format of a video kind of reminds me of a simpler time of YouTube, and that's not a condescension or anything against you, but it reminds me of a simpler time back in the mid 2010s of a YouTube, of when that everybody would just be making these edited and quick response videos to other videos. Now people seem to be switching over to live streams and live stream highlights, you know?
Right. Yeah. I think I like you mentioned that my channel is kind of old school, because I think that's a part of what influenced me to do what I do. People like Shane Killian and Back Alley Philosophy. So that's where I got a lot of my inspiration from, I guess. And I noticed that trend myself, that a lot of YouTubers are moving toward live streaming as opposed to just uploading a video. For me, I thought about maybe doing live streams. The thing is, my channel's kind of small for it. And also, it's the kind of thing you have to have time for to schedule and stuff. And I'm not sure if I really have that time to just sit down and plan, a live stream. I don't know what I talk about, honestly. But yeah, I get what you're saying. And I think if my channel grows bigger, or if I have ideas for content, it's something I'd consider doing. But it's not really something I'm planning in the immediate future.
Gotcha. I think with the way the algorithm is for you right now, that your channel might be more geared in the algorithm to be for edited content as opposed to live streams. I know that my YouTube channel, in spite of the fact that I try to occasionally do live streams and be a bit of a cross between consistent or fairly consistent live streaming and edited response videos, my YouTube channel is still geared more towards edited response videos. That's the thing that everybody likes to go to. It's my bread and butter, actually, which I mean, you probably know this because you've been a subscriber for a little bit of my channel too, right?
Yes.
And speaking of which, did you is it my response to Foamy the Squirrel that kind of inspired you to want to do your own response video to Foamy the Squirrel when it came to COVID-19 and lockdowns?
Well, I'll be honest with you, it did kind of inspire me, because I was looking for ideas for videos to respond to. And of course, for me, the COVID pandemic, the reason I started my channel was to kind of fight for liberty, to give liberty a voice, to fight against, big government, things like taxes, regulations, stuff like that. And this COVID pandemic is probably like the center, like the big liberty battle of our generation. Like
Oh yeah.
in an instant, government just ballooned up when we had lockdowns and this and that. So that's since the whole reason I started my channel was to kind of give liberty a voice. That's kind of the topics I've been sort of gravitating towards over the past year. And the Foamy the Squirrel one, kind of caught my attention because first of all, the guy seemed like a moron. He just seemed like he was spouting incoherent like he was just spouting incoherent arguments. Not really. The video is just this just jumbled mess of bad arguments, appeals to emotion, no data. And I think probably the funniest thing about the video is that he accuses people of like making bitching about stupid things. He accuses people of doing that multiple times when that's kind of what he's been doing the whole video. So I think that's
Right.
kind of the funniest part about that video is that multiple times he's accusing people of doing the very thing he does in that video. And that's why I feel that that video warranted a response.
Most
Primarily for
certainly.
that reason. Yeah.
There's another YouTuber. He's actually barely started with his content creation, named Zachary Colley, and actually, I think he might be more going towards other platforms. But nonetheless, he actually is the first one to have asked me to do a response to Foamy the Squirrel. He was all like, "This cannot go unresponded," and so I was all like, I kind of have other endeavors." But as soon as I actually watched it, I was all like, holy crap, I can actually do something with this, because there's just a raging lunatic of a leftist. He might
Yeah.
not even call himself a leftist, but really that's what he is, with how his beliefs kind of put him into,
Yeah, he
despite
uses
that
a
video
lo
alone.
he
So,
used a lot of leftist rhetoric, like community, society, all of us coming together to a collective greater good. So
right.
he never says it overtly, but it's pretty clear from the rhetoric he uses that that's the political group that he would most likely affiliate with.
The hippie bubble of let's all come together, or we should come together, or we will naturally come together.
Yeah, like we as
Everybody
a
say,
society, the collective greater good, like all that rhetoric you hear from leftists. If I had to guess, it's probably where his political leanings are.
right? And of course, anybody who goes fighting for liberty is automatically an anti-vaxxer. So I guess I should assume that you, Philosopossum, are a passionate anti-vaxxer yourself, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Of course not. I'm very
Right.
pro-vaccine. I've taken
You're pro voluntary vaccine, though, right?
absolutely. I've taken the COVID vaccine. I got Moderna. The thing is, at first I wasn't planning on taking it originally when the vaccine was first made available, because I was skeptical of it. It's this brand new vaccine that's just came out, barely tested, rushed through. So at first I wasn't planning on taking it, but after a while, I did some research. I found that additional testing was done. I found the stats on how safe it is, and I figured, what the heck, why not? So, and that's kind of the thing. The funny thing is that a lot of people associate doing your own research with anti-vaxxers, but in my case, it's doing my own research, which is what convinced me to take the vaccine. So, it's just kind of funny.
So you were looking at independent sources that were not CDC or WHO?
Yeah, I was trying to find, well, basically what I was trying to do was there's a variety of approaches I took. I tried looking at a variety of different medical journals, not just from one publisher, but from all of them. And I tried looking up the statistics, like what are the statistics regarding efficacy, safety, how many people have taken it. I also looked at the website. The interesting thing is that both Pfizer and Moderna list all of the ingredients on their website. So
Hmm.
if anyone is skeptical about the vaccine, they're not, they might think it has this in it or that in it. You can always look at their website and learn what the ingredients are. If that's the reason you're skeptical of taking it, then that's something you could do to
They
maybe
don't
aid in your decision making.
they don't post the ingredients for the Johnson and Johnson.
They might. I haven't looked. They might. If I had to guess, I'd say they probably do, or it's available somewhere if you really wanted to know. But
Right.
I know that some people are skeptical of the Johnson& Johnson one because that one was paused by the FDA for a brief period of time for some dumb reason. Like it caused blood clots in like a very, very small portion of the population, and it wasn't even like confirmed that the blood clots were caused by the vaccine. So that was, in my opinion, kind of a faulty decision on their part.
You're referring to Johnson and Johnson or
The
what?
FDA pausing Johnson and Johnson,
Oh,
because that's the one I wanted to get because it's effective after the first shot.
okay.
And I got my vaccine back when it was first made available to the public. Early on, when the vaccine was first made available to the public, it was like really hard to get because every place was like booked solid with appointments. I had to drive to a pharmacy like 3 towns over to get it. And now, fast forward a couple months, and the vaccines are like so abundant that a lot of places are just walk in and we'll give it to you.
Mm-hmm. So, as far as Johnson and Johnson, comparing it to other vaccines, um, so there wasn't there even like a, higher rate as far as extreme side effects go coming from Johnson and Johnson as compared to Pfizer or Moderna, or are they about the same as far as what percentage of people taking the appropriate brand of vaccine get extreme side effects?
From what I can tell, they're fairly similar. Again, I'm not like a vaccine expert. I'd have to do additional research, but from what I can tell from the research I have done, it is fairly comparable.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to find adequate research on all these things
It,
because
yeah,
CDC and all the official establishment organizations seem to be afraid of even the slightest bit of criticism towards their holy grail of their sacred cow. That's the term I was looking for.
yeah,
Towards their sacred cow issue, that being vaccines or lockdowns or the coronavirus or anything like that. And so, therefore, it makes people even more suspicious. So therefore, they'll latch onto absolutely anything that goes against the narrative, including the one article where there's this one video on there of this one guy saying that you're all going to die in about 2 years. Those of you that have taken the mRNA vaccine, which
it,
I'm super highly skeptical of that, and they'll just latch onto anything that is that goes against the traditional narrative when it more likely might be wrong, as opposed to the slightly goes against the narrative information, but they're doing a real good job of suppressing that more nuanced bit of information because, well, it serves as a niche against the establishment narrative. You know, you're saying?
yeah, right. I think you made a good point there. I think that the mainstream establishment trying to suppress criticisms of the vaccine, I think that that has the unintended consequence of giving the fringe whack job conspiracy theorists more ammunition, because
Right.
if these people are going to great lengths to cover up the vaccine criticisms, that sort of creates the impression that there might be something to these conspiracy theories. So, I think that the best way to deal with misinformation is to just have an open dialogue, to have an open marketplace of ideas where these issues can
Right.
be debated and discussed, where we can look at data, look at evidence, and determine what the actual facts are.
Mr. Merchant in the live chat, experts say don't do your own research. Yes, an actual article said that, not The Onion or any other satire website, which I wouldn't doubt it, Mr. Merchant. There was that New York Times article that I read a few months ago
Oh,
that was criticizing the idea of doing any critical thinking.
yeah,
But
it's the New York Times.
go ahead and link that article. You think you might be referring to New York Times Possum?
Yeah, yeah, it's a New York Times article. It just sounds like a New York Times article. It wouldn't shock
Okay.
me at all.
If you got the link on the hand still, though, Mr. Merchant, go ahead and shoot it there in the live chat.
I, rem- I remember there was another ridiculous article that was circulating around the internet. It was like, it's okay to yell at people who don't wear masks, or something dumb like that.
In other words, be a Karen.
Exactly. And I think I did make a response to that one.
You know what kind of annoys me, actually? And by the way, everybody, I know that the term Karen is a little bit overused, so your criticism is granted right there. But you know what kind of annoys me is that a whole lot of people will act like that the anti-maskers or the COVID skeptics in general are like the only Karens within society, kind of ignoring all the people who will act like complete Karens when they see a person without a mask. Like, there's
It,
this
it,
one video of where they saw don't know if it was from you that I saw it or who, but somebody shared a video of where that there's this old lady that was saying, "I hope that you and your family die," literally, because this one mom in the grocery store with her own kids, none of them were wearing masks.
Oh, I haven't seen that video, but it wouldn't shock me because part of the hypocrisy going on here is that these people, these COVID fearmongers, say that they're advocating for keeping people safe, for saving lives and stuff, but they have such all this vitriol and hatred and animosity toward people who just don't agree with them. Like I've seen, I was in a
Mm-hmm.
furry chat.
Including
Yeah,
Hassan Piker, who I'm in the middle of editing a response video to, by the way.
yeah, good. And I was in a furry chat somewhere where someone said something along the lines of, "Oh, and by the way, furries are uber left." So throwing that out there, someone mentioned that
Hmm.
some people were protesting the vaccine mandate in New York City, and someone in the chat actually said, "They can all die." I'm like, "What? So what? You think people should die because they don't agree with a political position that you hold?" But at the same time, though, we're supposed to uh, believe all this bullshit you want us to believe because it supposedly saves people's lives.
Hmm. You think that furries are generally leftists?
Yeah, overwhelmingly, like pretty much every single furry convention except for one I can think of recently is requiring both masks and the vaccine, both of them. And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And the thing is, I'm a libertarian. I believe in private property rights. Like, it's a private event, it's a private venue. If they decide that you need to wear a mask, if they decide you need to be vaccinated, I think that's, as a libertarian, I think that's their choice. But my question is, if you're requiring everyone there to be vaccinated, so everyone there is protected, why are you still requiring them to wear masks? That just seems unnecessary to me. Like, require one or the other, not both.
Yeah, that's one thing that never made sense to me. Like at first, the narrative from the CDC and Biden too, for that matter, was it's either be vaxxed or masked, and then about a month or two later, it was get both vaxxed and masked by a
Yeah,
lot of people.
I remember that early on, the CDC and Biden were their whole tune was, oh, once you get the vaccine, you don't need a mask anymore. And then like a few months later, they did an about face, and Biden was like, okay, we are issuing a federal mask mandate in all federal property, regardless of vaccination status. And
Right,
I
that's
think
a
that's
surefire way to give ammunition to all the actual anti-vaxxers. You know.
yeah. And what's funny is that and I think Ben Shapiro pointed this out in one of his videos, is that a good way to get people to not want to take the vaccine is to tell them you still have to do all the restrictions even if you take the vaccine, because because the whole selling point of this vaccine the entire pandemic was, this is your ticket to freedom, this is your key back to normal life. And if you take that incentive away, obviously less people are going to want to take the vaccine. So I feel that if it's your intention to get as many people vaccinated as possible, you should be emphasizing this idea that vaccines are the key back to normal life. Not trying to imply that, because people are going to think, well, gee, if I have to wear a mask anyways or do all these restrictions anyways, why bother getting the vaccine?
Right. Do they require masks for those wearing fursuits? I think that if they had any sense at all, JC, that they would say that if you're wearing the fursuit, you by default do not need to wear an actual N95 or doctor's mask or anything like that.
So I can actually directly answer that. It depends on the convention. For example, Philadelphia had a rule saying that you didn't have to wear
Furry
your
Delphi.
yeah, had a rule saying that you don't have to wear the mask under your fursuit head. But if you removed your fursuit head, you have to then put on a mask until you put the. But that seems fairly reasonable. With some, I think it was BLFC in Nevada was like, um, you have to wear a mask under your fursuit head, and it said on their website that fursuit heads do not
That's
count
dumb.
as an alternative mask. I know exactly. So like, several inches of foam, glue, and fabric can't stop COVID, but a tiny little piece of cloth can. Really?
Right. Does DarkCon still have the virus from unknown origin? Technically, You know, if I was to guess, I probably don't because I'm feeling absolutely no symptoms. I haven't had a fever for a while. I mean, my body's still clearing up from some of the phlegm from actually having the virus, but technically, I'm still within quarantine right now. I'm not officially allowed to go back to the job until next Monday. So yeah, that's unfortunate. No one still having to quarantine, getting it in my solitude. Osmo Ordo asks a question in the live chat. Hey, ask Philosopossum if he's seen my interview, assuming from the name he likes philosophy. And we talked a lot about philosophy in our conversation, right? Did you watch the one interview with Osmo Ordo?
I did not. If you can link it to me in my Discord server, and I'll take a look at it when I have the opportunity.
Okay. I'll link it to you in DMs because I'm not in your Discord server, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, so I guess to go a little bit off of the subject of lockdowns, vaccines, and COVID-19 and whatnot, you might have said this a little bit earlier, actually, but just to uh, retread those grounds, what gave you the idea in the first place to start a YouTube channel? Well, you said it's because that there needs to be more voices for liberty, right? Why you originally started your YouTube channel?
Yeah, basically, because the way I saw it was that a lot of mainstream media is overwhelmingly leftist, authoritarian, and there is right wing or more liberty oriented media out there, but I felt like it just wasn't enough, or it was being drowned out by the left. So I felt like I can at least contribute in a
Being
small.
drowned out by posers like Fox News.
Yeah, uh-huh. Fox News, we could do a whole separate conversation about that shit. But anyways, I just kind of felt like I can, at least in whatever small way I can, contribute to the cause of fighting for liberty. And one thing that especially kind of wanted me to kind of get into this was that I saw a video from a skeptical human about why taxation isn't theft. And it's this 45-minute long video where he makes several arguments explaining why taxation he feels taxation isn't theft. And the thing about it is that the arguments aren't really good, but they're phrased in a way like the guy's good at presenting rhetoric, and he was able to phrase these arguments in ways that would probably be convincing. So I saw that video and was like, you know what? I could I could take on I could take on this video. And that's one reason. That's kind of what inspired me to finally start the channel. Is basically.
All right. I got a question. What would you call yourself now? Would you call yourself anarchist, or would you technically call yourself more of a panarchist? That is, if there is any considerable difference, or what is your political beliefs now?
Okay, if I had to summarize it, I'd say that I'm a panarchist. And to explain what that basically means, it's pan meaning all and archy meaning political system. So it's every political system. And the simplest way to explain it is do whatever you want. If you want to be an anarcho-capitalist, if you want everything to be market-driven, if you want to live under no government, you can do that. If you want to be a socialist, if you want to share everything with everybody, you do that. If you hold on one second. Yes. Okay.
I'm gonna mute him since he forgot to mute himself. Okay, so
Sorry about that. Just had to deal with something real quick, but
all right,
yeah,
you're saying.
yeah, and basically, it's if you want to be an anarchist, be an anarchist. If you want to be a statist, start your own government. Cool. Just don't force people to participate. It's basically politically just do whatever you want.
Okay. If you want to be a statist, go and do that. Just don't force anybody to it. So,
Yeah.
what would that technically mean? Would that mean that nobody's allowed to be? I mean, ideally, would that mean that nobody is allowed to be born inside of a statist society?
Well,
Because
I guess
inevitably, if somebody like lives and has their birth inside a statist society, that person that they're giving birth to is inadvertently being forced to participate in the statist society. If you get my
yeah,
drift.
yeah. So Basically, I thought I used to be an anarchist, right? When I first got involved with politics, I thought, I'm an anarchist. I thought I was anti-government because I hate taxes and regulations and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But then I thought about it, and it's like, I wasn't sure if it was really government itself that I had a problem with, more specific things the government does. And then I kind of realized that because one of the big debates in libertarianism is anarchism versus small statism. Is it better to have no government or at least a small government that doesn't violate people's rights? And I feel like the whole anarchy versus statism debate kind of somewhat misses the point. I feel like the
Hmm.
bigger picture was uh, we're all sort of in this paradigm, this way of thinking where we need to force our preferences onto everyone else. So statists want to force anarchists to live under a state even if they don't want to, and anarchists want to abolish the government for everybody, even people who want government. And then I thought that paradigm is kind of counterintuitive. The more I thought about it, and that's sort of the idea behind panarchism, is that if you want to live under a state, live under a state. If you want to be an anarchist, then you can just not live under one, and that's sort of the idea.
If I had to argue for devil's advocate for anarchists, because I have a lot of anarchists within my fan base, I think that they'd be all like, we want our portion of land of where that there is no government. If you want to go ahead and live in a traditional country with a traditional, state within a traditional state with some form of government, well, then that's your prerogative. But do not force me to abide into that state by conquering my land or anything else like that. And I just noticed that I still got the Dark Coof nickname right now on my avatar. But anyway, I think you get my what I was trying to say there.
Yeah, yeah, I get the gist of it.
All right. Um, Silver Cyber Cod 2000 says, spoiler alert, J&J had blood clots. The thing is with that is that there's always the minority of cases of where that there are like extreme side effects with vaccines, particularly the COVID-19 vaccines, as that is the more heated debate nowadays. I guess if I had to ask one question out of curiosity from what you have researched, Philosopossum, um, is in comparison to other vaccines related to that are meant for other diseases like traditional flu shots or rubella vaccines or um, what's the word I'm looking for? Smallpox vaccine or anything else like that. How does cases of percentage of extreme circumstances, extreme side effects within a populace that has taken a vaccine compared to the COVID-19 vaccines? I do not know how jumbled that question was.
Yeah, yeah, I think I get the gist of what you're asking is how does the percentage of experienced side effects between COVID and non-COVID vaccines relate?
Yes, that's a good way of rewording it. Sometimes I get a little bit too wordy with my questions, but go
Yeah,
on.
yeah, I hear you. I am not like an expert in that. Uh, it's not something I've thoroughly researched, so I couldn't really give you an answer on that. I would guess the advice I would give people is just to, before you decide to take a medication, whether it be a vaccine or anything else, even a Tylenol, just be mindful of what you're putting into your body. Be mindful of the potential effects it can have, what the ingredients are, because not every drug is necessarily for everybody. And I'm not necessarily saying don't take the vaccine. Obviously, I'm pro-vaccine, but just kind of be aware of the potential side effects, or if you're allergic to any ingredients or anything like that. And when in doubt, you can always talk to a physician. Call up your doctor and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about taking this drug. I'm not sure if it's a good idea," and they would possibly be able to help you make that decision.
Right. And if I had to guess without having any without actually researching this yet, which I know that's bad on my part. I should actually research it before saying anything, but whatever. If I had to guess, though, that there are probably a higher percentage of extreme side effects with the COVID-19 vaccine as compared to other vaccines, mostly because of how much more rushed it is. But if I also had to guess, it's still a minority of the case in which that it ever happens, blood clots or any other severe side effects like that. And so the way I see it, I think that this virus is not dangerous enough, is not fatal enough to be initiating any kind of force, be it lockdown, shutting down businesses, mask mandates, or vaccine mandates. But at the same time, I don't think that the extreme side effects from taking the COVID-19 vaccine is so extreme enough to where that people should be super afraid of getting it of their own volition. Uh, I think that's all I want to say right there. I mean, how much do you agree with that a bit of talking point, Possum?
Yeah, I agree with it completely. I think that um, generally, I think COVID has been blown out of proportion. And when you say that, people often take that out of context. Nobody's necessarily saying that it's harmless. Nobody's saying that it doesn't
You
pose
think
any
it's a
risk.
hoax?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, well, yeah, that's another one you often hear. If you criticize the hysteria, people often say you don't think it even exists. Like get the fuck out of
Oh
here.
god,
But
yeah.
anyways, uh, when you look at data, though, you see that there are certain groups that are more vulnerable, like immunocompromised, elderly, people with respiratory conditions, and those people are the people we should be targeting our protections towards. The problem with things like lockdowns and mask mandates is that these are sort of spreading resources thin, you know, interfering with the lives of people who aren't at risk, and then you redirect resources away from protecting people who are at risk. And I think a perfect example of this is what happened in New York when Cuomo was back when Andrew Cuomo was in office. He was cracking down on all kinds of things within the state. He had strict lockdowns, rules for businesses. You know, meanwhile, while all these government resources are being diverted toward these, interfering with people who aren't at risk, the virus spread like wildfire through the nursing homes and hospitals in New York. So while you were busy interfering with the lives of people who aren't at risk, the people who are at risk got decimated by the virus. So I think that just goes to show you what the right strategy is. Focus on the people who are vulnerable.
Right. Right. I understand, and that's quite amicable. Um, I know that we're kind of jumbling all around with the questions going back and forth, but kind of back with the origin story of Philosopossum, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
Um, would you say that you have always been a panarchist?
No, it was kind of a transition process. I was an anarchist, but I was also kind of a little bit of a statist too, because there's aspects of government I'm not necessarily against. And I guess being on the fence between statism and anarchism was what kind of gave me the epiphany that maybe it's not necessarily a choice between you know everybody gets government or nobody gets government. Maybe there's a more nuanced look at the issue is what's in order.
All right. Um, so you've never been a leftist of any sorts.
If I had to summarize my general political views, I would say I'm mostly right leaning. There are some issues that I lean left on. For example, I'm pro LGBT. I'm pro legalizing drugs. I'm
Hmm.
pro police and military reform. I'm pro. So yeah, I hold. I'm generally sympathetic with programs that aid the poor and make education and healthcare more available. So there are quite a few issues that I do lean left on, but if I had to summarize my political views, I'd say I'm mostly right leaning.
Okay. Um, and I guess that the if I had to guess, the way that you rationalize that being somewhat amicable to the idea of any sorts of welfare is because our tax dollars obviously are already taken from us as is, and the fact that there be any existing welfare state at all, that the idea that our tax dollars get voted on to be devoted to that does not in of itself infringe on our liberties more than it did beforehand when we were still ultimately taxed It's just when that you start mandating a minimum wage or the business to do XYZ thing, where the infringement on liberties becomes kind of twofold. Like, one, they're taxing you in the first place, and then secondly, they are using your tax dollars against you via police force to
Yep.
mandate that you do XYZ thing with your business.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's kind of a raw deal because you're paying for something that's detrimental to you. Like it's kind of really dumb if you think about it. Like not only are you being forced not to smoke weed, but you're paying to be forced not to smoke weed. It's
right.
kind of it's kind of the dumb logic behind it. But yeah, I think I get the point you're making. And when I say programs that aid the poor and make education, healthcare more available, keep in mind I'm not specifically referring to government programs. I'm speaking of like programs in general. There's
Okay.
various examples of this, like charity or things that communities come together and do. Like in our local town, we have like a community kind of food drive where every week people from the community come together and drop off food, and then there's people who prepare it meals for homeless people.
Right, but
And
then there's the leftists who will say if you think that charity is the option, that that's just a right wing talking point or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah, I think
Something
that in
dumb like
many
that.
ways you can hold viewpoints that are left leaning without necessarily being a full blown leftist. Just like you can hold viewpoints that are right leaning without being a full blown conservative. So I would say that the fact that I sympathize with certain left wing issues like addressing poverty, making healthcare affordable, uh, pro LGBT, that doesn't make me a leftist.
So I guess if I had to clarify on your belief, you are somewhat sympathetic to the idea of providing for people in welfare or whatever else, but you don't actually advocate for increasing taxes and expanding the welfare state, right?
Right. I think that all aid to the poor programs should be as voluntary as possible. I would since I'm more of a I'm more of a small government statist than an anarchist, so I'd
Hmm.
entertain the possibility of maybe like a small welfare program, just to maybe catch the people who fall through the cracks of private charity. Like that's something I'd possibly entertain, but I would say that all aid to the poor programs should be as voluntary to the farthest extent possible.
Right. My biggest thing is welfare reform.
Yeah,
Right now, like putting back in the work mandate. Although I think Trump actually did that during his administration. It was taken out by Obama and then put back in by Trump. The work mandate for applying for food stamps. Although there's all the welfare reforms, air quotes, reforms in the bad way that Biden, I think, has done to try and provide for people more in the wake of the lockdowns or in the wake of the pandemic. Excuse me. Increasing the stimulus bills or stimulus checks and all that stuff.
right. And just real quickly to address the issue of work requirements. The left usually wants to get rid of work requirements for any sort of assistance programs because they think that that's something you should be dependent on. And I feel this kind of goes along with a trend I'm noticing on the left is it's that they don't see welfare as sort of a means of helping people. They see it as like a political move because if the real purpose of like a welfare or charity or support program is to get people just to help people become independent. And that's why I think work requirements for these programs are important because your goal isn't to just sit there and be dependent on the state. Your goal is to sort of give someone a sort of security blanket that they can sort of fall back on until they eventually get on their feet. So I feel that the left is kind of perverting uh, because these programs from helping people to a political move because if someone tells you we're going to give you free shit and you don't have to do anything to earn it, of course people are going to want to vote for you. If you're just handing out free
Hmm.
shit. So to me it's like they're not so much concerned about helping people be independent or helping people out of poverty as much as they are getting votes, pushing an agenda. And I think if I had to guess, I'd say it's the biggest reason that the left is pushing for welfare, not out of actual concern over poverty, but out of it's a political move, basically.
Yep. I don't know if there was anything more. Actually, there is one more question on the point of panarchism. See, I'm a little bit confused as to what exactly panarchism is, because for a little while I thought that panarchism was that it was, in theory, the belief in a voluntary sort of government, like in theory, a voluntary government, and that there's a government to somewhat uphold the rule of law, make sure that nobody's rights get violated. There's a law of the land that says you cannot murder or rape anyone that you want to, and if you do that, then you are going to have some punishment put against you, be it jail time or whatever. But at the same time, that very same government, air quotes, is voluntarily funded. It's not actually coerced funding via traditional taxation or anything like that. But I guess that's not what panarchy actually is. Panarchy is just saying all political philosophies are allowed within society. Just do not coerce anybody into, obliging into that ideology.
Yeah, basically, it's sort of the idea that, look, if you are a socialist and you want like communal control of everything, get some of your fellow socialists together, go start a commune. You do you. Just don't force people to participate. That's it. And that,
Okay.
yeah, if you and your friends want to get together and buy some land and say this is our republic of social democracy, a welfare state, whatever, cool. You do you. I won't be living there, but you do you.
I gotcha. Um, Actually, there is one thing that just sort of popped up for me. I recently rewatched your video response to Stephen Crowder when it came to Labor Day, and you mentioned the you gone talking about how unions were originally set up, and made gave out the implication of how that they fought for safety regulations and stuff like that. You made reference to some shirt factory fire. What was it called again? Triangle
Yeah,
shirt.
the Triangle Factory fire.
A triangle factory farm fire. Excuse me. Yes, and I guess the question that I was wanting to ask somebody who's like a whole lot closer to being an anarchist than I am. How does safety regulations apply within and under panarchy or anarchy or uh, whatever your beliefs are? Like, go ahead and explain that.
Okay, well, I guess the simplest way of explaining it is that there's no central authority on like work conditions like there isn't like OSHA. Like in America, we have OSHA, and so other countries have an equivalent organization that mandates what the rules are for workplace safety across the country. Whereas in a more libertarian society or a society based on like free market capitalism, you wouldn't have this sort of central unified plan for for across the country. It would be more of it would be sort of handled on a more case by case basis. So let's say so instead of having like one rule for all businesses, businesses would sort of decide what their safety standards are going to be for themselves, or you would have employees probably in a union negotiate with their employers. Uh, that's basically what it would come down to. Instead of a central plan nationwide, it's more of an individualized. What are the needs of this individual workplace or these individual workers? Uh, and
Hmm.
instead of going through the government through a bureaucracy, you would have employees or most likely the case, organized together in a union, negotiate with the employer to say, hey, there's this, let's say there's a factory somewhere and it has this really dangerous machine with all these moving parts that have no safety guards on them. And the employer decides not to put one on because it's too expensive. Ordinarily, what would happen is you'd go to the government, you'd beg some bureaucrat to take care of it, and it would go through this whole paperwork process, and then eventually you might get something done about it. Whereas what I'm envisioning is a world where those factory workers would come together, form a union, and say, we feel it's in our interest to have this safety equipment installed, and we're going to negotiate that directly with the employer.
So there would be no government enforcing body to enforce one standard for everybody as far as the safety regulations go. But instead, there will be these case by case labor unions within a certain company that will that will pressure, I guess, not technically force or coerce, but pressure a company to put in forth a certain safety regulation as per according to the individual case, individual companies versus their appropriate labor unions.
Yeah, correct. And just to clarify something,
Okay.
the government can still like kind of be involved to enforce the agreement. Like, let's say that some unions and a union negotiates with an employer to have some safety standard implemented, and the employer refuses to follow through with that agreement. The employees could like bring up the issue in court. So the government could still be involved to an extent, to the extent of enforcing the agreement. It just wouldn't have these unilateral powers to dictate specifically, okay, this is what your business has to implement.
Okay, interesting. It somewhat reminds me of you know of how that the wages are set up within the Scandinavian models, right? Of how that they are negotiated, the wages for the employees for each company within, say, Norway or Sweden, or Iceland. The way that it is set up is that you go through the labor union, and the labor union helps negotiate your wage for the company, as opposed to the government just having a one size fits all, this is the bare minimum that you're to pay all your employees sort of setup, you know?
Yes, exactly. I think that's an excellent analogy because, and I think this is something I frequently like pointing out to minimum wage proponents, is that a lot of these other countries don't even have a minimum wage. Like Hungary, Sweden, both no minimum wage, and low class employees or working class employees actually earn more on average than they do in America. And one of the reasons for that is that instead of having a direct national minimum wage, the wages are negotiated by unions.
One thing that I never quite understood about the Scandinavian models, I don't know how much you know about this, but that's why that I'm here, is want to hear your opinion to be chimed in on this. And I don't think that this is the case, but one thing that I kind of wondered was even though they do not officially have a technical minimum wage that they are all supposed to pay their employees, although Denmark and Finland, I think they do still have their own minimum wages, unfortunately enough. But in Iceland, Norway, and Sweden, they don't have their own minimum wages. But I just go wondering, are they by law, by government, forced to oblige and deal with the labor unions? Are they or something like that? I don't think that's the case. Like, I haven't actually seen the evidence that that is how it's set up, or if there's like some non-government coercive way that somehow the labor unions have a grip on the companies.
Right.
I don't
So
know if you know about that.
one of the arguments you'll often hear is that in Nordic countries, unions get government backing. From what
Okay,
I
yeah,
can
that's
tell,
kind of what I'm
yeah, yeah.
getting at. You're
From
saying?
from what I can tell, that's not the case.
Hmm.
The issue, one of the things that people don't understand in America is that unions are often restricted by government. The government will either ban unions from an industry, or they'll restrict the way they can operate, or they'll say this industry is only allowed to have one union, and they'll basically give one union a monopoly over an industry. Other countries don't do that. So I think that's why unions are more effective in other countries, not because the government's backing them, but because the government's not restricting them like they do here.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to ask for clarification if you were referring to that's how it's working here or that's how it's working over there.
Now, over there, you actually, and this is another thing that's interesting to point out when socialists talk about how great Scandinavia is because of all the big government. They're actually surprisingly small government. They have less regulations than the U.S. and corporate tax rates in some of these countries are actually fairly low. So that's part of the reason that the argument they make is that, well, they have all these welfare programs, and that's why they're successful. the only reason they have those welfare programs is because their economy is strong because of the lack of regulation. And I mentioned this before. You can have a large public sector at a low tax rate if your economy is strong.
Right. Actually, that's a one thing is that in Norway and Sweden they actually have higher taxes, particularly for their middle class,
Yep.
than us here in the U.S. Um, I guess they just have a whole bunch of leftover revenue that goes into their treasuries that is just sitting there doing nothing, but they could potentially do something with it. Um, I mean, I guess we could make that assumption. They do not need to tax their middle class as high as they do, but they do it anyway. I guess.
Yeah.
Unless I'm wrong with that assumption.
Yeah, and another interesting thing to point out is that Denmark is actually lowering its taxes as of recently because
Hmm.
they've been a high tax country for a while, but it's causing a lot of problems with their economy. So in fact, this is actually kind of something funny I bring up when people say Denmark. You often hear socialists say Denmark is the happiest country in the world, and I respond by saying, "Oh yeah, they're so happy that they burnt down the tax administration building in Copenhagen to protest how high their taxes are. That's how happy they are."
Oh wait, come again. Sorry, say that again.
They burnt down because the Danish people are having to deal with all these high taxes for so long. They eventually got sick of it, and they burnt down the tax administration building in Copenhagen as a
Oh.
protest. And when people say Danes are the happiest people in the world, I can say, yeah, they're so happy they burnt down a building in protest. That's how happy they are.
And it is a little bit of a, double-edged sword. This is not. I don't think this is the first time that I've heard that Denmark is kind of a relatively unhappy country, especially if you line up of how relative it is of how high of a welfare system they have. I mean, with of how high of a welfare system, you would think, at least by leftist thought, anyways, that by default they would be a happier country, but that's not exactly the case now, is it?
Right. And I think another issue is not even necessarily uh, whether or not it's a happier, if Denmark is a happier country, is it happy, are they happier because they have a higher public sector? Because you'll often hear, because we could assume for the sake of argument that maybe healthcare and education is more available in Denmark. We could assume that for the sake of argument, but still make the case that is that necessarily because they have higher taxes? Could we not do things, maybe in a different way that could make these things more available, more affordable and available? Because the argument then would be, uh, it would kind of shift the argument from does providing more social services make people happier to assuming that providing more social services makes people happier. How best do we provide them? And are there alternatives to taxation that might achieve the same results?
Right. Nightshift 10,000 says, "God damn, those Danish are fucking legends." Referring to burning down the
Yep.
tax administration. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, at least they're targeting the organization that is actually responsible for their grievance, as opposed to here in America, we apparently tend to burn down the businesses or the establishments of people who are not responsible for our grievances.
Exactly, and it's kind of
Riots.
funny. It's kind of funny. People get mad at when people are struggling financially. They get mad at the employer that's providing them money and providing them opportunities. They don't get mad at the government, which is taxing their income and putting regulations in the way of their of their success. So I think there's this. We have this sort of blame capitalism, blame the free market culture in America, and I think that's like the free market has just become this scapegoat when really nothing provides people, not only does nothing provide more opportunities for success than the free market, but most of these issues people complain about, I don't make enough money, uh, things are too expensive, there's very little job mobility in my industry. A lot of that is not even though it has nothing to do with capitalism, it's from the government.
Right. I mean, that's one of the things that gets more frustrating is that sometimes it's not even a free market, or anything capitalist. What gets even more frustrating is when they start conflating government action or government practices in with of what their grievances against air quote capitalism is. For example, a worker be complaining about how little money that they're gaining from their paycheck, and really, you got to look at that one part of the pay stub of where that says federal income tax. That ain't a fault of capitalism or of your boss. That is the government taking away that portion of your money so that you have less money to spend. Sorry, that's not capitalism or free market. Like, redirect where your anger is actually supposed to be, commies, socialists, workers
Exactly.
in general.
And what the funny part about it is that they think the solution, they beg for more of things. They think the remedy is more of things that cause the problem. So you're not making enough at work. So they'll beg for a minimum wage. And what happens is the minimum wage gets increased, and then the employer has to lay people off, or restrict hours, or do things to cut expenses that that hurt the employees. So the employees will have their wages cut again. So the employees will have their income cut, and then they'll be like, "Well, we just need a higher minimum wage." It's like minimum wage didn't fix the problem. Increasing the minimum wage didn't fix the problem the first time. Why would it fix it again? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just sort of this vicious cycle where people beg for a solution to a problem that contributes to the problem and thinks that we need more of that solution. So it's just kind of a vicious cycle.
You know what's a kind of dumb argument that I heard recently is when people go talking about wage labor, they think that that money that is taken out of your hourly pay via the government, that is part of the wage labor. When people go talking about the concept of wage labor, and I'm just thinking to myself, that's so dumb. Whenever capitalists go defending wage labor, they aren't defending the taxing portion of that wage that is taken out of your paycheck when you're working as a laborer for a business. You know.
Yeah, yeah, I've never heard that argument before, um, but it does sound pretty dumb.
I mean that's not the exact wording that the criticism is laud, but it is unironically something that I had come across on Discord, and it was all like, where do you even get this? That whenever we capitalists go defending it, it was somebody who is a more of a left market anarchist sort of persuasion. They thought they somehow got the thought in their head that whenever we capitalists go defending the concept of wage labor, paying somebody a wage for a labor that they provide to the company, that we're also hand in hand somehow defending the taxing side of it as well. Like, have you ever heard of ANCAPs?
Yeah, yeah, I've never heard that argument, but it wouldn't so shock me if there was someone dumb enough to say that.
Hmm. It's quite unfortunate. Um, you know what's also dumb is the how people will conflate private property and personal property as being two different things.
Yeah, personal property is what socialists want to keep. Private property is what they want to take from other people. That's basically the difference.
Yeah. Like, there's literally no practical difference. Actually, the only difference is that the function of it. As soon as and what I don't get is as soon as you start working as soon as somebody else starts working for you, as soon as somebody else steps onto your property, that apparently goes automatically, meaning that that is supposed to, at least ethically, anyways, supposed to be a shared ownership of that property. Suddenly, when really that's not part of the agreement. When somebody goes want to hire on somebody, part of the agreement is not I'm going to start relinquishing or sharing ownership with my company here with you, as well as paying you to work in this company. No, I'm just paying you just for the work alone. I'm not also part of the agreement for me is that I'm supposed to share ownership with you or whatever.
Yeah, like there's a lot of socialists that think just because they work somewhere means they're entitled to own the workplace or make decisions there. And like, yeah, that's not how that works.
Right. You know, a random question that just popped up in my head, actually. What would be the dumbest leftist commentator that you had ever come across, would you say?
Well, the dumbest specific leftist commentator would probably be Thought Slime,
Hmm.
but the there was one YouTuber I think was dumber than him. It was like Brian Mullins, the ranting fox or something. Like this guy just every time I watch one of his videos, he's just like mumbling incomprehensible gibberish, and I have no idea what he's even saying. And
Is he a leftist or what
I,
political persuasion is he?
I don't even know. He's pro mandatory vaccines. He's pro taxation. So if I had to guess, he's probably on the left. But who the hell knows? I don't even know what the fuck the guy says half the time.
And this is a small-time political YouTuber, you say?
Yeah,
Right.
he's fairly smallish.
I gotcha. Like I've run across those political commentators or self-acclaimed political commentators who will think that they are such hot stuff, that they are such a big-time intellectual powerhouses, when really some of their arguments would be some of the most overly simplistic and attach whatever negative adjective you will of their rhetoric.
Yeah,
Not a whole lot going on with the live chat here. I think we might have bored him, Possum. Oh
yeah.
man, I feel insulted. I don't know about you. No, it's fine. Uh, these interviews typically go kind of all over the place. Sometimes I will have a set format, and if I am debating a leftist in particular, we will have a long conversation that has somewhat of a flow on how that it's going, or I will remember something specifically that I want to respond to, and I'll go back to that or whatever. But yeah, with these interviews, particularly this one, wasn't. It was unfortunately not that well prepared, so that's my bad.
That's all right. Like I said, usually, like when I'm doing a debate, I try to have some kind of formal setup to it. But when I'm having an interview with people, we just shoot the shit, talk about whatever's on people's minds. Because I've interviewed other YouTubers before on my show, and
Hmm.
yeah,
I've never come across interviews.
yeah, two of them, the Libertarian Sith and the Executioner. And the
Oh,
Executioner actually found out about for some reason I don't understand, and I never really ask because I try to avoid drama. But for whatever reason, the Executioner and Filthy Heretic, not Filthy Heretic, the Executioner and what's his name, the Fox guy,
esoteric entity.
Esoteric, yeah. For whatever reason, Esoteric Entity and the Executioner have some kind of like beef going on. I don't know what the details are on that. Uh, I try to keep my distance from drama and shit, so I'm not really gonna. All I know is that that's kind of how I found out about the Executioner.
Yeah, I mean, to be quite honest, and you and I might differ on this, I have never been quite fond of back alley philosophy, that being both SO and filthy, but they always get embroiled in drama with people, and me, I just typically try to steer away from it. Like, yeah, I do have my problems with them, but I haven't started any long term drama with them. I've had my debates with them. One of them, actually, just one of them, anyways, that I had with. I was teaming up with Rational Outlaw actually against both SO and Filthy, and it was hosted on my 2 Cents YouTube channel, and it was about anarchism actually.
Interesting.
Yep, maybe I'll link that eventually or something.
Yeah. So was
Um,
it anarchism versus small government statism?
yeah, it was anarchism versus
Okay.
minarchism.
Yeah, yeah. I would say I'm probably more of a minarchist.
Oh,
I
really?
yeah. If I, I'm probably I lean toward maybe I'm more of a small government statist, but that's sort of where I land. I try not to get involved. Here's the thing: I try not to really get involved in the whole anarchy versus minarchy thing because I feel like that one boils down to a lot of semantics. Like for example, one of the arguments I make is that I'm a statist, but I'm against taxation. I think government
Hmm.
should exist, but it should be funded voluntarily. And then a common rebuttal from anarchists would be, well, then you're actually an anarchist because if an organization doesn't tax, then it's by definition not a government. And I'm like, that argument is just wholly semantic. Like we're not really making progress. So that's why I avoid the whole anarchy versus minarchy debate, just because I feel like it's kind of semantic and besides the point. Like if an organization is being funded voluntarily and it's not violating the non-aggression principle, I don't really care what you call it. Like if you want something that functions like a traditional government but doesn't initiate force, then call it a government. Fine.
Another problem with the anarchy versus minarchy debate is that it ends up dividing people who could be potential allies.
Exactly. I feel, yeah, I feel like as long as we all agree on the non-aggression principle, as long as we all agree on the basic core ideas that people should be free to live as they want, I
Yeah,
feel like I feel like you know I feel like as long as we all agree on that, then we can still come together to accomplish things. And instead of wasting time bickering over little details.
yeah, focus on debating against communists, people who are generally anti-private property and anti-gun rights, people who are pro-lockdown, all those kinds of camps of people.
Exactly.
You know, I actually got one question. Well, let me read this from Osmo Ordo. I never like discussions on rights. They bring up ideas that can be shot down just as easily as they can be brought up. There's only so much logic it can do that you eventually have to pull things out of your ass from nothing more than personal tastes, e.g., libertarian discussions of voluntary slavery and children's rights. Only so much natural law or AE can do. Um, I think that is the basis of where that it comes from is natural. Well, not actually, no, not natural law. He didn't say natural rights was what I was meaning to say, but he did not actually mention that. I think that's the basis of where that the discussion of rights should come from is natural rights and really libertarian ethics, and that being how do I put this? You're allowed to do whatever you want without infringing on other people non-consensually, that is.
Right.
That I think that should be the basis of natural rights. And really that kind of implies that inherently there will be no enforcing mechanism. So I guess I would have to give the benefit of doubt to people that technically you do not have a right to an enforcing mechanism, but unfortunately that is a well, I don't know. I'm probably not. I'm probably leading myself down to not making a whole lot of sense.
I
But
think I think I get the general idea of it, and I guess it comes down to the difference between positive and negative rights, and that is, um, does my right to property entail my right to have people protect my property? I think that's what it comes down to. Because let's say that you are a poor person who maybe can't afford to hire police or security or whatever,
or
and
buy your own firearm.
somebody comes and breaks into your house, and of course, you would have the right to defend yourself, but maybe let's say that you're too weak to defend yourself, and you can't afford anyone to protect you on your behalf. Are you entitled to have someone come and protect you? I think that that's sort of what that person was getting at.
Right. Uh, if that person you're talking about Osmo Ordo in the live chat.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that is where it gets more difficult. Is the mechanism that should be appropriately set up for making sure that people's natural rights do not get infringed upon by rapists, thieves, or murderers, or anything else like that.
Yeah. Right.
Uh, what is one thing that is actually a hotter topic of a discussion than really any of that really is the issue of abortion, which I personally tend to be more in the pro-life camp, and that all I think by default implies that I am for a ban of some sorts on abortion, like to a certain point, anyways. Like I think that the cap should be 7 weeks. As soon as the fetus hits 7 weeks, technically they're not a fetus until 8 weeks at least, but all the same, I'm just using the term. The moment that a embryo hits 7 weeks after conception, that is when that you're no longer allowed to abort it, is my belief anyway. So I guess out of curiosity, what is your opinion when it comes to the issue of abortion?
Right. So I guess I should first start by saying that I'm not a fan of the terms pro-choice and pro-life because I feel that they kind of oversimplify the issue. Like
Hmm.
when people say, I'm pro life as opposed to I'm not pro-choice. What they're implying is that I want to force women to become pregnant and carry children. Like people who are against abortion want to force women to become pregnant and carry children. Like no one's forcing you to have sex without a condom. No one's forcing you to not take contraceptives. Like nobody's yeah. So I don't like those terms because I feel like it's oversimplifying the issue. Just because I'm against abortion unless there's a valid medical reason for it. But just because I hold that belief doesn't mean I want to like force women to get pregnant or even to be parents. Like uh, you don't, some people will get an abortion because they don't want to be a parent. I'm like, okay, then just have the kid, but put it up for adoption. Like there's ways of dealing with that issue of not wanting to be a parent that are less extreme than killing the kid. You know,
Hmm. Yeah, my beliefs too. I don't believe in forcing parenthood. Really, I just don't believe it in the right to that baby's right to life being infringed upon. That being a termination of a pregnancy, aka an abortion. Um, so as soon as you are disconnected from that person, that is when that they are, or you can, anyways, give them up from being your responsibility. But you cannot just literally throw them on the wayside. I mean, it is a little bit of a tough topic to tackle at this point. But as my beliefs stand right now, you cannot just throw the baby to the wayside to be eaten by the wolves without anyone else to tend to them before. You cannot get rid of the baby before you make sure that there's someone else to pick up on the responsibility of being caretaker of that baby, and that's by uh, by proxy what adoption is supposed to be. It's supposed to be you giving responsibility of caretaking that child over to the adoption agency, and hand in hand, the adoption agency they're supposed to be giving caretaking responsibilities over to an adopting parent.
yeah, right. So I guess if I had to summarize my views on abortion, it would be I'm against it unless there's a valid medical reason for it. For example, if there's a stillbirth or if carrying the baby would somehow be detrimental to the mother's health, which unfortunately situations like that happen, then it's understandable. But because you want to just have sex without a condom and not face the consequences, absolutely not.
Right. Um, the things like convenience and incest and even rape, I cannot justify in my mind to be allowable. Life of mother, yeah, or like you more broadly put it, any justifiable medical condition, you
Right,
can get a termination at that point. If somebody is going to die, well, then at that point we can give the person who at least has social connections, that being the mother who's out and about in the world, the choice to go ahead and see if they want to risk it or not as far
right.
as carrying forward with the pregnancy.
Yeah,
Um,
rape is an area where it kind of gets tricky because on the one hand, the person didn't consent to being impregnated. But on the other hand, it's not the fault of the future baby that you were impregnated against your will. So it's kind of this gray area where it's not the mother's fault, but is it fair to punish the fetus that didn't do anything that's not responsible for what happened to you? I guess that's why abortion in the case of rape, for me at least, is kind of a tricky issue.
it particularly gets tricky when somebody wants to bring up the violinist argument. Now, my 2 cents, his response to the violinist argument. I mean, pro-choicers they'll apply the violinist argument in both the rape circumstance and the convenience circumstance uh, situations when it comes to pregnancy. But when it comes to convenience or anything that is not rape, I don't think it is really applicable. You know what the violinist argument is, right, Possum?
Um, it's not familiar. Could you briefly explain it?
Okay, so it turns out that there's this one person who needs a blood transfusion in order to continue to survive, at least for a certain period of time before they can be, before they can stop it with the blood transfusion and get a, I don't know, a kidney donor or anything else like that. And let's say that a second person gets kidnapped against their will to be hooked up to this other person for the blood transfusion. But after that, he wakes up, finds out the situation that he is in which that he is connected to that person needing the blood transfusion. Obviously, it's not their doing. It's not even the person that needs the blood transfusion fault as to why they're in that circumstance. It's because of a third party who decided to kidnap you while you're stuck in that circumstance. And the third party in the case of the pregnancy is the raping father, if you can even call them a father, really.
Yeah.
And so the question, the little conundrum becomes, what do we do at that point? Do we force the person who has forced the blood transfusion against their will to stay connected to the person being immobile for a time until they can get the appropriate liver or kidney or whatever for the person needing the blood transfusion? Or do we go ahead and undo the kidnapping that was done on person 2 by disconnecting them appropriately from the person needing the blood transfusion so they can get on with their own life? But it would likely kill person 1. And the argument, that's basically the violinist argument. It's probably more better articulated from the more articulate and sharp pro-choicers on the internet. But the response that my 2 cents wants to bring to that argument, actually, I'll have to give you his link you his anti-abortion series, where he gives his own response to it. But basically, it is rather out there. This rhetorical scenario right here, it's way too out there to be even practical or for real. This violinist argument. And the reason why it's called the violinist argument is because the person needing the blood transfusion is a famous violinist. I think is basically why it's called that. But the response that, or part of the response, anyways, of what my 2 cents would say in response to this is because it is not within a person's natural biology to need to hook up to become a blood transfusion for a medical victim or whatever. But within the pregnant mother, it is within the natural capacity and capability to be providing for the baby inside of them. So it is a bit of a appeal to nature fallacy, but I don't know. I think there might be a point of when that an appeal to nature is not fallacious, and this might be it. But if one was to argue real hard, then maybe somebody can convince me of the rape exception. But even as it currently stands, my conscience cannot be for allowing the rape exception because, again, it's not quite equivalent to the violinist circumstance because the violinist rhetorical situation is so out there and outside of a human's regular natural capacity, whereas a pregnancy, being able to bear a child is within a mother, more specifically, as that's most of the time the case. Sorry, leftists, that there are not as many pregnant men out there. Trans men.
Oh boy, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. But all the same, it is within the natural capacity of a woman to be able to bear children. And even what is it about the idea of pregnant trans men that it becomes another conversation? What's your commentary on that?
The whole transgender debate, that whole conversation.
Right. I mean, obviously, we believe that people should be allowed to get their transgender procedures if they want to, right?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier in the interview, I am pro LGBT. I think people have the right to identify however they want. I think people have a right to get whatever, your body, your choice. If you want to go through any sort of gender transitioning, if you want your genitals flipped, if you want breasts added, or removed, depending which direction you're going. Cool, you do you. That's your body, your choice. Uh, the only thing I tend to criticize is when these people want to impose by force, or not even by force, just kind of. For example, one thing I talk about is the issue of privacy. Certain spaces like bathrooms, locker rooms, changing rooms, showers, certain facilities where people tend to be exposed, tend to provide privacy, that they tend to be segregated by gender. If you're a man, you use a man's room. If you're a woman, you use the woman's room. And part of the issue here is that you'll have a person with full male anatomy, the twig and berries, insisting that they're a woman, going to a woman's changing room where there may be young girls who don't really need to see that. So I would say it's sort of like that old maxim, your right to extend your fist ends at the other man's nose. In this case,
Yeah.
your right to identify however you want and live according to that identity ends when it impacts other people. So, or in another case, another thing I tend to criticize are using government force to make people go along with this. So, I've mentioned this before in some of my videos.
In other
Things like,
words, you're not allowed to segregate your bathrooms by gender. You must accept the full forced or inclusion
yeah,
of
yeah,
trans people.
yeah. So things like the Equality Act, which would say, um, by law, if you're a property owner, you have to let, if you're or a business owner, or whatever, you have to let, if a dude with a twig and berries with says, I'm a woman, you are obligated by law to let them into the woman's room. I
Hmm.
think that's BS. I think that property owner has the right to say, no,
Oh yeah.
you're a man, use the men's room. I think that's property owners have a right to set whatever rules they want. And this is something that the left has been kind of hypocritical on lately, when we talk about things like mask requirements and vaccine requirements. If a company requires employees to be vaccinated, the left will be like, well, it's their business, they get to choose. But then I'll turn around and be like, okay, when it comes to your policies for your bathrooms, we get to make the rules for your property. So it's like, you care about these rights when they're convenient for you, when people make decisions you agree with, but when they make decisions you disagree
Right.
with, then that whole idea, their property, their choice, suddenly goes out the window.
The same thing kind of goes with the right too,
Yeah,
because I mean, a very quick reference. I used to be sympathetic or even outright advocating for the idea of state enforced bathroom segregation. That being the state was going to come in and say that you can't allow any men, even trans females, into the female restroom at all. I mean, that was my older conservative days. But what criticism towards the right, of how the right will sometimes be hypocrites. Like, on the one hand, they're all like, let them deny the cake to the gay couple,
yep,
essentially. But now it seems nowadays that the right doesn't want to allow a left leaning business owner to start enforcing their own mask mandates or even their own vaccine mandates. There
right,
was the case with South Dakota, actually. I think it was an episode of Matt Walsh that I actually watched, which, by the way, when it comes to the four Daily Wire co hosts, Michael Knowles is the one that I like the least. Matt Walsh, I at least like him better than Michael Knowles. But Matt Walsh, he had a disagreeable take that I could not more heavily disagree. And he was criticizing the South Dakota governor, Kristi Noem, I think is her name, of where that she was all like, we cannot be banning businesses from putting in their own private mandates, doing whatever they want with their own private business, their private property, however they want to. We cannot start stepping in and say, no, you're not allowed to do this like the left would do. I mean, we cannot fall into the same. We cannot fall into the same mindset as left. As the left, yeah, I wish I could remember exactly what she said in response to that, but Matt Walsh in response was just all like, because Joe Biden is totally going to get advice on how he wants how he's going to form his beliefs from Kristi Noem, and I'm just thinking to myself, no, Matt Walsh, that is so dumb. It's not a matter of whether or not that Biden will take Kristi Noem's example on how to formulate his beliefs. It's that we need to be more consistent with our own beliefs, and that being allow private businesses to do whatever they want with their private property. You know.
Yep, and that reminds me of something I've actually talked about with some of my friends who are furries. I'm generally a fan of Ron DeSantis. I he he seemed to be against the COVID hysteria. He avoided, locking down Florida, avoiding a lot of the same authoritarian restrictions that other states put in place, and for that I do admire him. However, there's one decision he made recently that I do disagree with, and that is he decided in the state of Florida, private businesses aren't allowed to require the vaccine. And of course, I disagree with that for two reasons. The first reason is on principled grounds. As a libertarian, I think that's a decision for those businesses to make, not the government. But also, there are perfectly valid reasons why a business may want to require vaccines. Let's say, for example, that you're a business that serves primarily elderly people, like you're a nursing home or something, uh, a nursing home or retirement center or some type of business that primarily serves elderly people, and we know that they tend to be the most vulnerable to COVID. That's a perfectly valid instance in which a business requiring vaccines might make sense. So, I mean, I'm against employers requiring vaccines, but I think there's certain situations where it is understandable why they would want to.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't want businesses to be putting forth the XYZ mandate as you know. I mean, there's just one restaurant in Kansas City that I wanted to check out the last time that I was visiting up there with my sister, and we could not go there because apparently I heard that they started doing their own vaccine passports. I was like, really? I wish you didn't do that, but your business be yours.
Right.
I guess I'll just avoid that restaurant and go on to a different restaurant. And ultimately, we went to quite a different Cajun restaurant that was quite atmospheric, actually.
Yeah, and that's basically how issues like this would be dealt with in a free market. People would.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Yes.
Just gonna go ahead and mute him for him since he forgot that again. Just have a family restroom or individual bathroom. Seriously, conservatives, if you are so scared about the trans people, just stay with your kid in the bathroom. This shouldn't actually be an issue, says Mr. Merchant. Yeah, fair enough, Mr. Merchant. I can agree with that.
I'm back.
All right. And yeah, so yeah, I can't remember what I was going to mention right there. But was you finished with your thought?
Yeah, basically what I was saying was that instead of having this central plan where every business has to do that or every business has to do this, in a free market, people sort of make those decisions for themselves, and a business would decide is the benefit of providing a safe environment from COVID worth sacrificing the business I would lose from mandating the vaccine? And business owners would decide that for themselves. And you as a consumer would also have the right to decide, I'm not interested in getting the vaccine, so I'm going to avoid businesses that require them. And you would be free to make that decision. For example, I wanted to go to back in the fall in September. I was planning on going to ConnectiCon, which is a convention in Hartford, Connecticut. And I was going to go there, but I found out that they're requiring masks, and I didn't really want to support that. So I found another convention in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the following weekend, which wasn't requiring anything, no vaccine, no mask, nothing. So they ended up getting my money instead. So through the free market, I financially supported what I felt to be a more ethical business practice, basically.
Yeah. I got one more question, and I think we might end the interview here soon since it's getting to about 1.5 hours.
Sure.
You mentioned LGBT. You called yourself pro LGBT, and I guess I just wanted to talk about this for a little bit because there's this kind of a hot debate subject with me and my subscriber base within the last year, at least. Before this year, this subject wasn't really much concern. I mean, we use pro LGBT as a catch-all to say that you are for allowing people to marry whoever they want and for people allowed to do whatever they want with their body as far as the transgender front goes, that kind of stuff. But all of a sudden, saying that you're pro LGBT is just giving a little bit too much credence to the left. And I just don't know if I agree with that entirely. But one of the arguments that some of the people within my fan base who will be arguing with me over this would be bringing forth is that when we say that we're anti-LGBT, we're not saying that we are for banning homosexuality, putting forth sodomy laws, or banning transgender procedures. No, we're just saying that we are anti the politicized LGBT movement. And I guess that's one question that I have for you. What does LGBT mean for you? Does it mean just people who are non-straight, essentially, lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgenders, or does LGBT mean the politicized leftosphere sexual revolutionary movement?
I'm actually glad you brought that up because I feel that that's an area where issues or where political battle lines are being drawn where they don't really need to be. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, people, LGBT people, at the end of the day, they're just people like the rest of us. They go, they work jobs, they have hobbies, they're normal Homo sapiens like you and me. They just have personal preferences that are considered different from the norm. That's really it. And I don't feel the need to make it a huge, draw political battle lines, because then what happens is I think it does a disservice to gay and transgender people who lean conservative or who may not. It almost gives the impression that the left speaks on their behalf. Yeah, exactly. And I have the same criticism with organizations like Black Lives Matter. The organization that if you're black, we represent what you believe. And I think that that's disingenuous, because I know a lot of black people that would say, yeah, no, we're against you looting and destroying our own communities, because what happens, these riots and looting, they're not destroying white-owned businesses primarily. A lot of those businesses in those neighborhoods, those are destroying businesses that are owned by black people, that employ black people,
Right.
that serve black communities. So a lot of black, you don't speak on behalf of them. A lot of them would probably say, cut it the fuck out.
See, I know what you're meaning, though, when you say that. When you say that LGBT people are people just like you and me, you're meaning anybody who is like not of the heterosexual or even like cisgender persuasion or identity.
Yeah.
I know what you mean by that, and that's what you actually mean. But some other people might hear you say LGBT people are people just like you and me. They might go thinking that you're thinking of political leftist sexual revolutionary activists who are somewhat sympathetic or even outright advocating for the normalization of pedophilic type bullshit.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
I know that's not what you're referring to, but it might
exactly.
put
And
somebody on a bit on edge on that front,
yeah,
sort of.
and it's a shame that you have to make that distinction. Like, it's a shame that being LGBT is even a political issue at all. Being LGBT, it shouldn't be a political thing. It should just be like a personal choice thing. Because I know good friends of mine who are gay are conservative.
Choice. You say that being gay is a choice. No, I'm joking. I think
I
I
hear you.
get what you're talking about. Using shorthand.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought there was going to be more of a point that you're going to make. Never mind.
Go ahead.
But yeah, I guess just to clarify, though, to you, LGBT means just anybody who is. To you, LGBT does not mean leftist, political, sexual revolutionary activist. Instead, it means somebody who is not straight.
Correct. And the funny thing is that The
See,
whole
that's
LG
what it. Oh, 1 second. See, that's what it kind of meant to me for
right.
years now. But
Yeah,
somehow, this last year, there's this sudden flip that I'm supposed to suddenly know about by default. That really LGBT means a leftist political activist and not just somebody of a different sexual orientation. I don't get it, but
yeah.
apparently there's some of these right wing circles that act like we're supposed to know this for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. And there's people who will say that being, being pro LGBT means you have to be on the left, and that's disingenuous to people. Like I know gay people who hate. There's one actually video I saw recently. I forget who it was by, but it was a gay person basically explaining why they hate Pride Month. They
Hmm,
feel that it kind of
right.
trivializes, them. It kind of, you know, makes them feel like they're being pitied on, or that because at the end of the day, most gay people just want to be treated like everyone else. They just that you don't have to make a big deal about how, oh, we feel bad for you because you're gay. Like, no, they just want to be people like the rest of us.
So most LGBT people, air quotes, that do not actually agree with the LGBT leftosphere
Yeah,
movement's
so
agenda.
yeah, again, because you have to sort of, and it's a shame you have to do this, it really is, but you have to sort of uh separate sort of, the LGBT political sort of establishment from actual,
People
like,
who are not straight.
exactly.
Ah, yep. It does get a little bit frustrating, but unfortunately, this is the world we live in, and it's probably going to be an ongoing battle too.
Yep,
It's the right battling with itself or whatnot. Um, yeah, I think that's all that I want to talk about. I might just end this live stream soon, actually, and get myself some dinner here in a bit to
sounds
get on
good.
with my night. And
I hear you.
I guess one last question that I have for you, Philosopossum,
Sure.
is it has been a little bit since you have uploaded any videos, and tell us, all of us listening, and me for that matter, uh, do you intend to get back into video editing at all anytime soon?
Yes, actually, there's a video coming up. Professor Stick made a video calling for vaccine mandates, so that's one of the videos on my agenda. And then there's one where Vosh basically makes fun of all the nurses who say they don't want to take the vaccine. Uh, uh,
Hmm.
yeah, Vosh is kind of an arrogant prick in my opinion, but
Oh yeah,
I think most people kind of hold that opinion about him. Even the funny thing, even people on the left like realize he's an arrogant dick. Like you'll even have like left people on the left making videos calling out Vosh. That's how much of a prick he is.
yeah. He's pretty much hated by everyone, it seems. So
Yeah,
yep. In closing here, not that we have that many people watching at this very second. Everybody who is listening right now or even in the future, I want to remind you again, go ahead and subscribe to Philosopossum. His YouTube channel, again, is linked down in the description box below, or you can just search up his name as it is spelled right here on the where I'm pointing at. You can't miss it, and you can easily find it. Go ahead and support his YouTube channel. He's a great content creator. Although the one downside that I will say is his audio content, his audio quality. Like seriously, get yourself a new microphone, Possum.
yeah. Just a heads up, some of my older videos don't have the best audio quality because when I first started doing this, I didn't really know how to edit, and I lived in an apartment in a noisy neighborhood. So some of my older videos, the audio quality isn't the best, but my newer videos, the audio is fairly decent from what I can tell.
All right. So, Possum, you have any final words to say?
Yes, two of them. First and foremost, I just want to thank you again very much for inviting me onto your show, for giving me time on your platform. I enjoyed this time. I thought this was a very
Pleasure
nice
is mine.
conversation. It was an absolute pleasure getting to speak with you and get to know you a little more. And second thing I want to say is that if you want to help me with that new microphone, I have a Patreon and a PayPal, and which I will be if you stop by my channel, you'll find links to. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Can you give me your famous ending saying, though?
Yes, of course. This has been Philosopossum, making stupidity play dead. Until next time, take care.
Exactly.
All right, take care, man. See ya.
And everybody who is watching, again, see y'all later, and have a good night. God bless, and again, subscribe.
Happy holidays.
Yes, 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 yes. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, and all that stuff, and
Yep.
Happy holidays.
All right, take care.